the channel, it's the return of the Kyle Peterson Top 5, and today we're counting down my top 5 Jim the Anvil Neidhart figures of all time.
The spirit of Ultimate Warrior will run forever!
Welcome everyone, Kyle here, and welcome back to the channel for another top 5 countdown video, a Thursday staple here on the channel. As every Thursday, we're counting down my top 5 or sometimes top 10 favorites of something, and today we're back to wrestling and we're talking all things Jim the Anvil Neidhart, of course, most well known as a member of the Hart Foundation with Bret Hitman Hart. And we did do a Bret Hitman Hart countdown top 5. It was the first ever top 5 we did on the channel, going way back a year, 2 years ago, as I always say, what is time? We might have to revisit that one, as there's probably been about 4 Bret Hart figures since then, and Bret very easily could be a top 10 one. So it'd be interesting to see how that one changes down the road. So look forward to that maybe in a year or so. Maybe we'll do another Bret Hart top 10 on the channel here, so stay tuned like I did say. But today we're talking his partner in crime. We're talking Jim the Anvil Neidhart, and one of the great tag team performers of all time, of course, with Bret Hart. But a lot of people always said Jim Neidhart was kind of Bret Hart went off to superstardom. You had the Marty Jannetty that kind of was left behind when Shawn Michaels went off to superstardom. Some of that over the years with some of the great tag teams of all time. But Jim Neidhart was always the big bruiser of the group, big strong guy. He was truly the Anvil and was well respected by a lot of people. But of course, when Bret went on his solo run, he kind of went different places. Of course, he turned into a cab driver. If you remember his old Hasbro figure, I always thought of it as a cab driver, Jim Neidhart. But Jim, you know, of course, tag teamed with Owen Hart as well. He did a few things with him. He went away for a while, came back as Who. When are we going to get a Who figure? Maybe one day we will. Who knows? But had a couple of different runs back and forth, went to WCW for a little bit. He followed Bret to WCW back in the day. Just kind of a journeyman in a lot of ways, especially after the Hart Foundation finally broke up. But a big, strong, tough dude, a figure and a character and a wrestler that we all know when we see it. There's no doubt in any real wrestling fan's mind when they see Jim the Anvil Neidhart in figure form, wrestling form on TV, whatever, that you know it's Jim the Anvil Neidhart. The great goatee going on there, the crazy infectious attitude, the big bruiser body. Jim Neidhart just really summed up a lot about 80s wrestling for sure. And we're going to count it down like we always do every Thursday here on the channel. We're going to start at number 5 and we're going to work our way to number 1 like we always do. And I'm going to ask you guys, get your list together, put it down in the comments. Make sure you put it in order. That is the fun part. That is the challenging part. So without further ado, let's dive in. Let's do the top 5 Jim Neidhart figures of all time. All right, we kick it off at number 5, and I went back and forth on this one. Is Jim Neidhart has a lot of figures that are very similar as far as favorability for me. A lot of them could be really easily moved from 3 to 4 or 4 to 3 and vice versa. But this is the one I struggled with the most, was number 5. I kept going back and forth between a few different figures, but what won out? Well, it was his original Hasbro figure. So this is what comes into number 5, the Jim the Anvil Neidhart Hasbro figure. Very close with some of the Jakks Classic Superstars. I almost went to the 3-pack. Then I remember that great 2-pack with Bret Hart. I believe it was a Pro Figures exclusive back in the day. The nice pink packaging on the Classic Superstars card. Had the nice leather jacket and the glasses, all that kind of stuff. But I had to go back to my playing days, and nostalgia wins a lot of times over some of these other figures. And that's where Jim Neidhart. I had to have this on the list because this was the Jim Neidhart from the Hasbro days. And it was a huge miss. And I say a huge miss from the Hasbro team, when in all honesty, this is kind of what he was wearing at the time. But it would have been great to have Jim Neidhart to match Bret Hart, have a true Hart Foundation. You kind of had to close your eyes or close one eye and pretend when you played. Just kind of imagined him in the pink and black attack. Of course, you could partner him up with Owen Hart, which I did a lot as well. But definitely an iconic Jim Neidhart. It was always weird to have him next to Bret because he had such a small head. Bret had such a big head, but that was kind of Hasbro back then as well. But a very cool one. A great position for Jim Neidhart here. I always loved this one with the hands that go back there, the bend at the elbow. A great playability character here. Yes, it left a little things to be desired, but it was so great, especially to partner him up with the British Bulldog, Owen Hart, Bret Hart, of course, having your own little Hart Foundation unit in your Hasbro playing days. So one that really leads on the nostalgia feels, that's where Jim Neidhart Hasbro hits for me, and that's why he hits in at number 5. Next up in our top 5 countdown of Jim Neidhart figures, we go to Mattel. We go to the Mattel Elite line. We go to Mattel Mattel Elite Series number 43 for Jim the Anvil Neidhart, his Elite figure. And we've had a few different Jim Neidharts, be it a basic Jim Neidhart and a couple of different Elites over the years. But this one was really nice, especially when it came out many, many moons ago, some 60 series ago, if you can believe that. But of course, we did get a Bret Hart to match this one. Really felt like the tag team of the Hart Foundation at the time. And a lot of people probably, when they close their eyes and they think of Jim the Anvil Neidhart, this is maybe what comes up to them. You get the tag title belt, which is always great, the pink and black attack, the anvils on the boots, of course the Anvil singlet there, get the little heart there, his sunglasses, then of course the iconic goatee that Jim Neidhart is known for. If you ever see anybody with a goatee like that, you always think Jim the Anvil Neidhart. You think he's going to be stroking it. I mean, if I'm walking into a restaurant and see somebody that has a goatee like that, I just imagine him talking like Jim Neidhart. And I'm sure a lot of people are that same way. But a very, very cool one, a very iconic one. Early on, I guess, relatively early on, and 43 seems way up there, but where we are right now at like 103, 104 coming out, definitely an old school Jim Neidhart, but an old favorite. From the Elite line, Series 43, Jim the Anvil Neidhart coming in at number 4. We're at the halfway point of our countdown. You got your list together? Make sure you put it in the comments down below. But we're at the number 3 spot in my top 5 Jim Neidhart countdown. And I was honestly a little bit shocked when I had all my Neidhart figures laid out. I knew this one would probably be on the list, but I didn't anticipate it to be this high. But here we are, coming in at number 3. From Mattel Retro line, we got the Mattel Retro Jim the Anvil Neidhart. And we talked about it number 5, the Hasbro edition. This is what the majority of us wanted all along at number 3 right here. We wanted this in our old school Hasbro days. Perfect one to pair with Bret Hart. We did get a new Bret Hart to pair with this, so really all right with the world is that Bret in Hasbro is one of the defining Brets of all time. But his head, of course, we all got to admit, a little bit big. Well, Mattel reran him, put him together the way we always envisioned him to be in our head. So it was a very, very cool idea. I think Jim got a very good body style for him. Instead of the arm bending there, we got the Ultimate Warrior pose, whatever you want to call it, here with the hula hoop at the top. And all around, really good looking Jim Neidhart. There's no denying, once again, that it is Jim Neidhart. When you see this figure, if somebody handed you this head, you would know exactly who this one is. So very cool. Righting a wrong, I guess, in a lot of ways is what Mattel did here. And I guess it worked because Jim Neidhart, Mattel Retro, coming in at number 3 in my top 5 list. We're getting closer and closer to the end. We're at the number 2 spot in the Jim Neidhart countdown. And number 2 goes back to the first wrestling line I ever played with, the first wrestling line I ever collected. We're taking it all the way back to the Hart Foundation, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, LJN. And a lot of times when I really do close my eyes and I think of Jim Neidhart, there's 2 examples that come up. And number 1, which we're going to talk about next, is number 1. But this is a very close second here. This is a very iconic Jim Neidhart. The Bret Hart that goes with it, very iconic as well. But for many years, when I thought of Jim Neidhart, this is exactly what I'd think of. And the LJN line, of course, very special to me. Growing up, being the first action figures I ever really collected, or I should say wrestling figures I ever really collected. Just a lot to like about this Jim Neidhart figure. A lot to like about having the Hart Foundation in your fig fed as a little kid. I did not have these originally when I was a little kid. I had a buddy that did, and he would let me play with them. And a lot of times he'd let me borrow them. He didn't cherish his wrestling figures like I did. Didn't have the hours of entertainment like I did. And a lot of times he'd leave them at my house for the weekend. Said, you can have them for the weekend. Play with them. And man, shot of adrenaline into my fig fed as a little player out there. Just a lot of good times with Jim the Anvil Neidhart in the LJN playing days. But LJN Jim Neidhart coming in at number 2 for me. Now we're at the end. Who's number 1? What is number 1? Stay tuned. Like a young boys to men, we've come to the end of the road, and we're at the number 1 spot for the Jim Neidhart figure of all time as voted by me. Do you got your list together? Put it down in the comments down below. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel as we got videos every single day and then some, and every single Thursday here on the channel. We're counting down my top 5 or 10 favorites of something, so I'd love to have you a part of it. Make sure you do subscribe, of course. But now we're at number 1. And I said last time, when I close my eyes and I think of Jim the Anvil Neidhart, there's a couple looks that come up. And that LJN was one of them. But the other one I always think of, which maybe it's not his most iconic look, but it's what I think of. And to me, this is the best Jim Neidhart figure of all time. Once again, we do go to Mattel. We go to Elite Series 74, the Collector's Edition, Walmart exclusive, Jim the Anvil Neidhart. And this is so iconic from the warfare of the Hart Foundation in the early Attitude Era, I guess we'll call it, for the WWF, WWE back in the day. When you had Bulldog, you had Pillman, you had the Anvil, you had Brett, of course, running roughshod in the WWF. Brett was the champion. Just a special time to be a fan. I forgot Owen Hart. How dare I forget Owen? A special time to be a Hart Foundation fan. There were bad guys in America, good guys in Canada. It was just a wacky time, and it really did feel like anything could happen. It felt dangerous. It felt like ECW really in the WWF at the time. Maybe that's how I always at least feel in my bones, deep in my bones about it. But this Anvil represents that time perfectly. I love the Hart Foundation jacket. Absolutely awesome. Love how that looks here. And of course, the great Anvil on the tights. You get the Anvils on the boots. The iconic Jim Neidhart head scan here. The mouth open. You got the glasses on. It's just Jim Neidhart all day long. And it'd be a collector's exclusive, a Walmart exclusive. What are we doing here? This should have been available to the masses. Very, very cool. That would fit perfectly in a Target Legends line these days. Just an absolutely awesome figure. So awesome, in fact, it came in at #1 in my top 5 Jim Neidhart figures of all time. But now I'm going to ask you guys once again, do you got your list? Put it in the comments down below. Of course, you made it this far. Don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. As you guys know, we got videos every single day, and then some, and even more content, including early access to all the videos over there on the old Patreon. You get Q&As, you get giveaways, you get pizza reviews, you get a lot of stuff on the old Patreon channel, and best of all, you do support the channel and all the content like this. You can also support the channel over there at ProWrestlingTees.com. Pick up a t-shirt, and don't forget social media, SirPaul64 on Twitter, Instagram, _Kyle_Peterson. So for the top 5 Jim the Anvil Neidhart figures of all time, I am Kyle. See you guys all real soon.